post the replay of this after we're done. Hello, hello, hello. I unmuted myself, right? I'm like so paranoid of that ever since I forgot to unmute myself that one week. Hello, hello, Tiffany. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I hope everybody is having a good start to their Monday. I know, like, technically, in a lot of places, today's a day off. I tutor in one of my businesses, and a lot of my students have today off. I'm kind of in a really motivated mood this morning, hence perhaps me accidentally scheduling our first one of these for what is sometimes a day off for people. But yeah, I'm really excited to dive into this with you. I want to firstly frame why I decided to kind of switch what we were doing kind of in our weekly like free events to this. And honestly, it really came down to the fact that, I mean, you guys know me, this community is called Burnout Proof because of the fact that everything I do comes from a burnout prevention lens. And I think one of the good ways we can do that, one of the best ways we can do that, in fact, is by burnout proofing our lives and our businesses through our systems. That is the whole point of this group, is for us to create burnout proof lives and businesses through our systems. And so many people come into this group because of Notion and because they want to learn Notion. And so many of the questions I get, I would say probably at this point, 80 to 90% of the questions I get are Notion related questions. So it felt like a really good use of this kind of free event we're having every week to be around Notion tips and answering some of those Notion questions. Yeah, okay, your part-time is closed. Yeah, I forget about holidays. I honestly forget about holidays too, because if it's like a motivating day for me to work, I'm gonna work. Even if sometimes that means like maybe I take a Friday off, but I work on Saturday. If I'm motivated and I have the energy, I would rather work at a weird schedule than like an unconventional non-corporate schedule than feel like I have to fit myself into a 9 to 5 corporate schedule. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm with you, Tiffany. 100%. But let's get into it. For those of you who are watching the replay, and there's always going to be a recording of this unless I just like mega screw up and forget to record it, which that should not happen. But unless I mega screw up and forget to record, there's always going to be a recording of this. Samantha and Tiffany, I know you guys are kind of OGs on these live streams. I feel like I've seen both of you on these before. Samantha, I can't actually recall if I've seen you. Tiffany, I know I've seen you. But I'm pretty sure you both have been on live streams before. For those of you who have not been on one of these live streams before, they're going to happen every Monday, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. They're going to happen every single, yeah. Okay, I thought so, Samantha. You have been on some of these before. They're going to happen every Monday. And they may very well get, actually, I don't know what I was going to try to say with that. Take that back. They're going to happen every single Monday. And if you are new here, I just want to say welcome. We've had a lot of people join this community in the last week or so. I want to say we've had 15 to 20 people join in the last week or so. So yeah. I love having so many of you here. So if you are new here, welcome. If you are not, welcome back. I'm always happy to have you guys back. And today what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about what dashboards views you should use in Notion. Now, before I dive into the actual answering of that question, if you have something that you would love to see me talk about in regard to Notion, then definitely make sure, I actually did 2 things this morning. Make sure you head on over to this post right here. A lot of you shared stuff in the comments of stuff that you would like to see. And then what I also did, and I pinned this and I added it to the actual post itself, is I created a Notion form to capture these requests so that they go just like immediately into my systems so that we can make sure we are tackling these. And I wanted to start with the what dashboard views you should use, because I don't know about you guys. I feel like this is the common thing. Like, who here has actually ever opened Notion and felt completely overwhelmed by how much stuff you're seeing? I know we've got a couple of you here live. Drop something in the chat if you feel like this applies to you. You open Notion and you just get overwhelmed by the sheer amount of stuff that is in front of you. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'm really glad you brought that up, Samantha. The clean canvas is also an overwhelming part of Notion. I mean, you guys probably heard me say this before. The best part about Notion is the worst part about Notion. It's a blank slate. You can build whatever you want, but it's a blank slate and you have to build what you want to show up, which is a big reason why I'm such a fan of templates as a starting point. But I actually also feel like this notion of trying to have so much stuff on a screen is one of the things that is something that I think a lot of people do wrong. And actually, Tiffany, you've just pointed out a very, very good point. I feel like the clean canvas makes me want to fill it up, and then I get overwhelmed trying to embrace the white space. Amen. And I actually think thinking about it in from the perspective of dashboards that have a purpose is going to really help with that. And I'm going to show you guys some examples of dashboards that have a lot of stuff on them and dashboards that don't. Even the dashboards that have a lot of stuff on them, if you're purposeful about what that stuff is, and if there is some sort of a process to the stuff that you're putting on the page. And when I say process, I'm not talking like corporate SOPs process. I'm actually just talking about, is there a mental process you're going through as you're like scrolling down the page? In those situations, it's actually okay to have a lot on the page. I've said it before, I haven't said it in a while, that there's really 4 different things that make up a system. And I think a lot of times when we think of systems, we think of the app that we are using. Oh, I use Notion. That's fantastic, but that's just one step in the process or in what makes up a system. You also have 3 other steps. And one of those is, do you have a process for how you use that system? And that's kind of what I mean with that. And I'm going to give you an example of that. So today I'm going to be showing you how to create dashboard views. This isn't necessarily going to be a walkthrough where I tell you, okay, we're going to type, / and then you're going to type dashboard and you want to click on this. That's not necessarily what this is going to be today. I might do that on occasion if you guys want me to do some build alongs in some of these videos. I am absolutely happy to do that. But today is going to be more of me showing you only what you need when you need it and how to kind of filter through what is actually important. So when it comes to dashboard views, a big piece of this, really, dashboards come down to 2 things. We need to think of what's the context that we want this dashboard to serve. And we also need to think filters. So filters plus context is really how you make a productive dashboard view. Your brain needs different information at different times. Monday morning, what I'm thinking about right now on my Monday morning is show me what's due this week. Not everything forever. I need you to show me what's due this week or what I actually am focusing on today. When you're in planning mode, maybe that is at the end of the week, maybe that's over the weekend, maybe that's your Monday morning. Maybe it's, I want you to show me the projects that I have by stage, not a giant task list. Maybe when I'm in planning mode, I don't give a shit about the individual tasks. I care more about what are the projects. When you are in client work mode, maybe you're coming from the perspective of, I want you to show me this client stuff, not all 47 of my clients, right? So the golden rule too, I think with dashboards is, and there's exceptions to this, but I think they're purposeful exceptions. If you're scrolling to find what you need, your view isn't doing its job. We might need to filter further. So I'm going to give you guys some examples of what this looks like. And I'm actually even going to give you an example of a full dashboard that's got everything on it, but even then how I've kind of streamlined it so it's not overwhelming. So let's go ahead and share this. So this is, let's go to my Ellen's HQ. So every Notion page usually has some sort of a home page, like an HQ page. I used to have mine where I had to scroll a ton to get to everything on my HQ page. But even then, I will say right now, I don't use this page very often. This is kind of just the top level page in my system and everything else is built up under it. I don't use this page a lot, but notice even on this page, I don't have to scroll very far. I have kind of this little master dashboards guy at the top here, which actually I need to add this to our potential things to talk about because I've gotten multiple questions about my master dashboards database. I've got a little place where I've got motivation and I've got a quote and I've got this little life progress thing. And then I've got my to-dos. So I could actually work off this page. I just don't. I tend to work off of pages that are very specific to whatever the project or purpose that I'm working on. So for example, I have my content calendar. This is kind of my content dashboard page. And this is also doesn't have a lot on it. But again, to think of what I was talking about before, context plus filters, the context for this page is I go onto this page when I am content planning. That is the purpose of this page. And on this page, I have kind of what's my weekly content schedule. I have like the table of content that I'm working on. I actually never use this page. I'm going to delete it if I'm being completely honest, because really what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the parent pieces of content that I'm working on. I'm looking at what content is on the schedule for this week that I need to create. And I'm looking down here at the content that I need to create as well. So like I've got different views happening here. I don't necessarily have an ideas view because I usually am doing content planning like kind of as I'm creating content. But like I could here, if I was scheduling stuff out, I could create a content ideas page. Let's see. I'm just going to actually duplicate this. I could create a page that maybe I use for planning and ideas. I can call it that. Let's do a list view. And I want this to show me the stuff that is an idea. And maybe I also want this to show me the stuff that is unscheduled. So it doesn't have a time. Oops, not timeliness. That's not what I wanted. I want it to show me the stuff that has not been scheduled. So these are stuff that is my rough ideas for content. They have not been scheduled. And maybe like one more thing that I might want to do, because this is actually something I personally find really helpful in my content database, is if I have a piece of content where I already have like a video for it, I already have created the reel, I've already created the content idea, the static post, the carousel, whatever it might be, I will upload them into my system so that I have easy access to the stuff that I've already created. And so actually what I'm going to go ahead and do here is, instead of filtering by that, I'm going to sort by the stuff that already has media in it. And apparently I don't have many of those. Oh, I wonder why that is. I bet it's something with how I'm filtering it. Like maybe I could have it under booked and planned. So maybe it's one of these other status properties is probably what I need here. But like I could create a planning and ideas database. I could create like that kind of a view in my system that I use for planning and ideas. Similarly, and I actually have kind of already created this view, I could have like an in progress, which I kind of feel like is what I have going on down here with this board view here. Is these are the things that are like rough ideas that I'm still working on, and stuff that's in progress, and that needs to be worked on. The green tells me what status property it's at, like the colors tell me what the status property that it's at. So like this one is a rough idea. This one is something that has either been scheduled, published, or whatever. So the color of the tile down here helps me know where I'm at and like what stage it's at. So this is kind of my in progress stuff that I need to work on. And then you can kind of already infer this is the actual calendar view. I personally like looking at my content calendars in a week view as opposed to a month view, because the month view gets very, very overwhelming. So filtering by, and actually in this case, it's not a filter. With the calendar view, you can either change it between month view or week view. And I mean, just look at the difference with that. With month view, there's just so much shit on here. And honestly, most of it I don't care about because it's in the past. It's already been published. So I like to look at it in week view. So all of these are things that you can kind of think about with a content dashboard. What views do you need? What stuff do you need to be able to see? Do you need to be able to see a place where you can see your ideas, where you can see the stuff that's in progress, see the stuff that's scheduled? Okay, those tell you the views that you need to create and how you might need to filter those views. So it's the same database actually that I'm looking at here. I just have 4 different views for how I'm particularly looking at 5 different views if you count the one down here for how I'm looking at those pieces. I'm not necessarily moving tasks around. I'm just changing what I'm looking at. So that's like one example. I think another example is, I'm trying to figure out how to do this next one because it's client information. I agree with you, Tiffany. The recent addition of color coding is very, very, very handy. And actually, if you don't necessarily, for anybody who's watching this right now live or you're watching the replay, let me actually show you really quickly how to do that. It's the conditional color. guy right here. So if you go, this is your settings. It's this little like 2 lines right next to the new button. If you go down to conditional color, you can tell it what you want to color according to. And in this case, I use the status property to color it. Now, another thing that I do is I have client dashboards, but I actually also have this thing called an outreach tracker. I think the way I'm going to show you this outreach dashboard is I'm going to show you the one that is inside of my template and not the one that I actively use, because again, client information. So I just want to respect the privacy of the people that I'm kind of in conversations with. So let me kind of walk you through this outreach dashboard and how this works. But like I said before, context and filtering is kind of a lot of how we make decisions about what dashboards we need, right? So let me give you the context. And then as I walk you through the different views, I'll tell you how I filter them. So the context for why I created this particular outreach dashboard that I'm about to show you is I do a lot of networking. It's virtual networking, it's in-person networking. I do a lot of networking in my business, and I want an easy spread, an easy dashboard that I can pull up and have up when I'm networking, to add new connections to kind of take notes on them. Because whenever you're doing networking, it's usually like they'll do a little pitch. They'll say, hi, I'm so and so from so like this place. This is my business. This is how I support people. And sometimes there are people that are prospective clients, like you'll be on those calls and they'll be like, oh my God, like Ellen, I really need your Notion services. But other times it's just like, oh, this would be an amazing person to have on my podcast. So I want to be able to take notes on these people and add them to my network and add them to my dashboard. And that is why I created this outreach dashboard. So let me go ahead and share my screen to kind of see how this could work. And some examples of what this could look like. So again, this is the template outreach dashboard because I don't want to show client information. And actually I have been, oh, that's not what I wanted. I've been mega simplifying this dashboard down. I used to have all these targets things in here. I find them unnecessary now. So this is kind of what the dashboard looks like. And as this gets more populated, you're going to have to scroll further. This is probably one of the few dashboards where I do have to scroll, but you kind of see it's broken into sections. Okay. So when I am networking, and actually, I think I might even have mine is called my outreach / networking dashboard. That's like my actual dashboard that I use. But I've got kind of a little snapshot of my like core offers and goals at the top. But really what I'm doing when I'm on a networking call and somebody is on the call who I'm like, oh, okay, this would be a really, really good person for me to connect with. Maybe I want to invite them to my next summit. Maybe I want to have them as a guest on my podcast. Maybe I want to see if they're interested in doing a podcast swap. I will add them to this part. So this is the reach out and build relationships part. And you might think that this is an overcomplication, but I have actually 2 separate databases. I have a contacts and people database, and then I have a CRM database. The difference between these 2 databases in my brain is not everybody that you meet is a client. Maybe they're not a prospective client just yet. Maybe you're just getting to know them. You are making that connection. You're building that relationship. Maybe you see, like I mentioned before, that you could benefit each other in terms of doing a podcast swap. So sometimes people are just connections in your network. Like maybe you want to keep track of, this person does PR and I have clients who need PR support. So I want to keep their contact information in my system so I could send them some clients if that's something that my clients need, So those people that are just like kind of connections in my community go into my contacts and people database. The people who are like, Ellen, I'm really interested in Notion and I really need help figuring out that thing. Those people I add to my CRM. Because those people who are prospective clients. So I will have this up, and as people are talking, if there are people that I want to build a relationship with, I think we, could benefit each other and like learn from each other and maybe send each other business. I add them under this new contact place to my outreach track or to my network tracker. And then if they've expressed interest in my services, I add them down here to my CRM. And then I kind of have all sorts of other things that I would do from there. And then I have down here a place where I can kind of snapshot, track my sales, track my results. On mine, I've actually changed these databases and these graphs to being just keeping an eye on the number of new leads. Like, am I actually generating new leads? Am I actually growing my network? The months, like sometimes I strategically take months off of building my network, like December, November. I'm not necessarily interested in building my network at those times. And then other times my goal is actually to build my network and to grow the connections that I'm making in the entrepreneurial space. So I use that to kind of give myself a visual cue of, am I on track with kind of some of my goals and where I'm at this month. So that's an example of like a client outreach dashboard. And I actually realized I forgot to talk about filters in this, because again, I have a bunch of people in these databases, but I'm not seeing these people all the time. And these are some important ways that I've filtered this so that it's not overwhelming for me. This new contact, I have it filtered so it's only showing me the people that are added that day. Because that's like when I'm networking, that's all I really care about. Like, is what are the connections that I've made that day? And who are the people that I might want to follow up with, send an Instagram DM, see if they want to do a coffee chat and connect further and see how we could support each other and if we might be able to throw each other business. So I just have this filtered so it's only the people I added today, because I'm happy about the people that I added a week ago at that last networking call, but I also want to keep myself focused and not get distracted by the other people that I might have met 2 weeks ago. So this one is just the people I met today. Same thing here is I've got a this week's contacts where it's got a similar filter, where it's the people that I contacted, but they were contacted that week. So you can kind of see I've tried to name the view and I've tried to filter the view in a way that kind of is in accordance with the name of that view. My Rolodex is just the people that I have connected with. These are just example people in this system. So like, these are the people that are in my world. These are the people that are in my network. If you and I have been on a call at some point in time, it's entirely possible that I added you to this database because I want to make sure I keep track of that connections. In the entrepreneurial space, we can make so many connections between school communities and networking and whatnot, that I don't trust my brain to keep track of those connections. I trust my systems to keep track of those connections. So that's what that's for. And then even down here in the new clients that I might have connected with, same thing. These are the people who've been added this week. And then this pipeline view is where people are at in my like customer journey, if you will. So maybe I connected with somebody last week and they expressed interest in scheduling a call and I sent them a link, but they haven't yet. That might be somebody that I want to nudge and follow up with this week to see if they're still interested in a call. So that's kind of the purposes that these two views serve. So basically, to kind of sum up everything I'm talking about here is, when you are creating dashboards, I think the most important things for you to think about is, what is the context, or maybe purpose is a better way to think of this. What is the purpose of that dashboard? And what filters can I put in place so that I'm only seeing what I need to see on that dashboard? And I hope I've kind of given you some examples of what that looks like. The purpose of the first dashboard I showed you was content creation. Some of the filters and some of the different views inside of that dashboard were, am I ideating? Am I planning? Am I actually like hashing out the details of this content? I didn't actually go into that today, but like each of those has a different purpose. Each view has a different purpose. And then same thing with the networking dashboard. That dashboard was built for when I'm in networking calls and I'm adding people to my network. And the different filtered views are so that I can stay focused and not get overwhelmed and just think about the connections that I've made on the call that day. And then the other views, like the Rolodex view, is, okay, these are the connections I've made over time, which is really helpful, especially if like sometimes I'll go on a networking call and I haven't been on that networking call in weeks, maybe, or months, maybe. And I don't remember if I've met somebody before. I'll go over in my Rolodex and I'll type in their name. And if they're in there, cool, that means I've met them before. And it's nice to then know, like, when you follow up with them on Instagram and say, instead of saying, hey, nice to meet you this morning, if you've already met them a couple months ago, you can instead say, nice to see you again. And I want to say with that, because I know sometimes with the idea of like putting people and notes on people into a system like this, I've gotten feedback at one point in time from somebody that felt cold and that felt transactional. I guess I don't think about it that way. I think about it as, I know that I can't trust my brain to necessarily remember everything. I mean, shoot, I met some people on Saturday night that I'd technically met before, and I didn't remember because I didn't have this system in place when I'd met them several years ago. I'm the kind of person that it helps me to remember things, to have captured it somewhere, to have written it down. I think it brings in some of the visual into it, and I'm a very visual person, is if I can see their name written out and I can see their name written out and the fact that I met them on this networking call and that this is their business, the simple act of writing that down and capturing it somewhere helps me remember it. And then in the off chance that it's been a few years, a few months, I'm not putting the pressure on my brain to remember all of that. We meet a lot of people, especially if you do a lot of business networking. You meet a lot of people, and I would rather have a system that supports my brain in better remembering those conversations and the people that I feel like are going to be the people that I want to stay in contact with. That to me is a more effective system than like scrolling back through Instagram DMs and how did I meet this person 6 months ago. It's just a more efficient use of my time. So if that may not necessarily be a strategy that works for everybody, it might not necessarily feel good to you to use that system like that. That's just something I found to be very helpful. Is it just helps me organize my thoughts. It helps me to have written something down and have something that I can go back to instead of scrolling back through like Instagram DMs or something like that. So I want to kind of give 3 questions to wrap this up and a couple like common mistakes to avoid when it comes to creating dashboards. Firstly, when it comes to like knowing whether or not you should create a dashboard, what views you should have in your dashboard, the first thing to ask yourself is, when will I use this dashboard? Or maybe even, when will I use this view in my dashboard? Because when you will use it is going to inform what the dashboard needs and what kind of filtered views it might need. If you're using it for morning planning, you're using it when you're doing your weekly reviews, you're using it for client calls, those are going to be very different dashboards depending upon the use that we're talking about. So that's question number 1. When will I use this view? Question number 2 is, what do I need to see? Like in the networking example, I don't need to see the person that I met a month ago who's not actually on the call right now. I need to see the people that are on the call. So I filtered it just by the people that I added that day. If we're talking about tasks databases, do you just need to see today's task? Okay, let's filter it so you're only seeing today's tasks, not this week's tasks, not this month's tasks, not the tasks that are in the past, just today's task. Do you need just ideas? Do you need to just see one project? So when will you use this view is question 1. Question 2 is, what do I need to see in this view? And then kind of simultaneously with that, what do I not need to see? Do you not need to see completed stuff? Okay, let's filter it so then when you check something off, it disappears from the view. So you're not getting your mind cluttered and distracted by the stuff you've already done. Do you not need to see future tasks? Do you not need to see archived projects? That can inform how you need to filter as well, because then you can build filters to match those conditions. And maybe you start to find that you're missing certain properties, can be very revealing about what is and is not missing in your system. So that's the kind of 3 questions to ask yourself is, when will I use this? What do I need to see? And what do I not need to see? And then you can build a dashboard that supports that. Okay, some kind of final common mistakes that I'll say when it comes to this is, having too many views can be just as overwhelming as having no views. So you even saw today when I showed you that content calendar, I had a view in there that I would just like, why is this in here? I don't use this view. Okay, so that's a red flag that maybe you just want to delete this view and use it and use the other views that are already there. Maybe it's a red flag that that view is just no longer serving its purpose and we need to create a view that is actually serving its purpose. So too many views we want to avoid just as much as we want to avoid having like no views and having that blank page overwhelm mentality. The second common mistake to avoid is views that don't have a clear purpose. That example also applies to this one. I made this view, but I never use it. I made this view and I don't even know what it's for anymore. Okay, that's a view without a clear purpose, as opposed to like if I think of my networking dashboard, I have a this week's contacts. Okay, those are the contacts that I've made this week. And that has a very, very clear purpose. I know what I would use that for is to keep track of, okay, these are the conversations I'm actively having this week. And then the third view, and you can actually see it happen in my ideas database, over filtering. Sometimes when we apply too many filters, it hides stuff that we actually need to see. And I think that was happening a little bit with my ideas dashboard that I kind of quickly tried to create for you guys. It's what happens when you're talking and trying to Notion at the same time. over filtering can actually create problems as well. So I think those are 3 mistakes to watch out for when you are building your dashboards. Too many views, views without a clear purpose, and over filtering. I think the sweet spot, you can kind of see it in some of mine, is like 3 to 5 views on any given dashboard, because everything else kind of just becomes noise and complication. There is definitely also going to be some experimenting that's going to happen with, okay, I created this view, I thought it would be helpful to me, but actually over the course of the last month, I haven't actually used it. Okay, cool. Lesson learned. We delete that view. We don't need it anymore. So that's kind of how I would answer the question of what dashboard views should you use. And notice it's open-ended. I didn't necessarily tell you, oh, you should build XYZ of these 3 dashboards, because I don't know necessarily your business. I don't know necessarily what you're even using Notion for. But if you did need a place to start, especially if you're a business owner, I think having a client dashboard, I think having a project and task management dashboard, those are the 2 places that I would probably start. In my opinion, those are the two most non-negotiable dashboards that I would create. It's our sort of productivity hub and then like a client hub. And to wrap this up, I've got another thing that I got to hop onto in just a second. But to wrap this up, I'll just give you a quick look at what these look like in my systems. Why can't I see Notion? Oh, I minimized it, so school's not showing it to me. So my productivity hub looks like this. It's not filtered right now because I'm on scheduled tasks and unscheduled tasks. I mostly use this as a planning page. This is what my productivity hub looks like. So I have a little quote, tasks, where I can see which tasks have been scheduled, which tasks are unscheduled, which tasks are completed. And then I have a place down here where I can see all of my current projects. I have ongoing projects, projects that are happening next, completed projects, and someday projects. So that's my productivity hub. And then my client hub, again, I got to find the one that's my template. This is what my client hub, the one I showed you a second ago was the networking. This is what my actual client hub looks like, is I can see my leads that come in per month, clients by status, clients by source, clients by service, and then I have my pipeline, my active clients, and then all of my clients. So if you want some ideas for how these are set up, those are some ideas for how they're set up. So once again, this was just kind of a snippet of what you could do. Absolutely, Samantha. I'm glad you enjoyed it. If there's anything that I showed you, this is kind of where the fact that we're doing this week to week becomes so nice. Because if anything you guys saw today, Tiffany and Samantha, since you were both here live, if you're like, hey, can you dive in more deeply into your client CRM setup? Or can you dive more deeply into this? If there's anything you want to see more of, anytime I do one of these, let me know. Let me know, because that could absolutely be something that is like the next week's topic. All righty. All right. I got to jet. I'm late to my next call, but thank you for both of you who joined live. For those of you who are watching the replay, thank you so much for watching. Drop any questions, comments, etc. you've got below, and I will see you all later this week. Bye.